Have you ever heard of a military defeat so catastrophic it changed the course of history? A loss so profound that an emperor would wander his palace at night, crying out in despair? Today, we're diving into one of Rome's darkest chapters. The story of three elite legions that marched into a forest and simply vanished from the face of the earth. This is the tale of the Varus disaster and Rome's forgotten legions. In the early 1st century CE, the Roman Empire was at the zenith of its power. Under Emperor Augustus, its borders stretched from the sands of Syria to the shores of Britain. But there was one region that Rome just couldn't tame: Germania. A vast, intimidating expanse of dense forests, treacherous swamps, and fiercely independent tribes. For the Romans, it was the final frontier, a land they were determined to bring under the eagle's shadow. The plan was simple: push the empire's border from the Rhine River to the Elbe, effectively swallowing a massive chunk of what is now modern Germany. Leading this ambitious charge was Publius Quintilius Varus, the governor of the new province. In the autumn of 09 CE, Varus was marching with three of Rome's finest legions, the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th. These weren't just ordinary soldiers. They were the backbone of the Roman army, hardened veterans who had conquered for the empire across the known world. Accompanied by auxiliary troops and civilian followers, his column stretched for miles. Varus believed Germania was mostly pacified, a dangerous assumption that would cost him everything. His confidence was largely built on the trust he placed in a man named Arminius. Arminius was a prince of the Carusi tribe, but he was also a Roman citizen and a commander of Germanic auxiliary troops. He had served in the Roman army, learned its tactics, and understood its strengths and weaknesses. To Varus, he was a loyal ally, a bridge between Roman authority and the local tribes. But secretly, Arminius was forging a massive tribal alliance, using his insider knowledge to orchestrate the perfect trap. He was playing the long game, waiting for the right moment to strike a decisive blow against the invaders. As Varus prepared to move his legions to their winter quarters, Arminius came to him with a story. He reported a minor, localized rebellion deeper in Germania, and convinced Varus to take a detour to crush it. He assured him it was a quick route, though it led them away from the fortified Roman roads and into the dense, unfamiliar territory of the Teutoburg forest. Varus, suspecting nothing, trusted his charismatic advisor and marched his legions straight into the ambush. The timing couldn't have been worse. A violent storm broke out, turning the narrow forest paths into a muddy quagmire. Heavy rain and fierce winds lashed at the Roman column, which was already stretched thin over several miles. Carts got stuck, soldiers struggled to keep their footing, and the disciplined Roman formations began to break down. It was then, when the Romans were at their most vulnerable, that the forest erupted. From all sides, Germanic warriors emerged from the trees, launching a furious assault. They didn't engage in a pitched battle, which the Romans would have won. Instead, they used guerrilla tactics, striking quickly with javelins and spears before melting back into the woods. The Romans were trapped. Their heavy shields and short swords were useless against an enemy they could barely see. The terrain was their greatest foe. They couldn't form their famous defensive testudo or tortoise formation, and the dense trees neutralized their cavalry. For 3 agonizing days, the battle raged. The Romans, led by Varus, tried to fight their way out, but every step was met with more ambushes. Their numbers dwindled. Morale plummeted. They were exhausted, starving, and completely surrounded. Varus, seeing that all was lost and facing the ultimate disgrace of capture, fell on his sword, taking his own life. Many of his senior officers followed his example. By the end of the 3rd day, the slaughter was complete. The 17th, 18th, and 19th legions were utterly annihilated. Nearly 20,000 Roman soldiers, plus thousands of followers, lay dead in the mud and rain of the Teutoburg forest. The legionary eagles, the sacred standards that symbolized the honor and spirit of Rome, were captured by the tribes. The ultimate humiliation. When news of the disaster finally reached Rome, it sent shockwaves through the empire. This wasn't just a defeat. It was an existential crisis. The historian Suetonius wrote that Emperor Augustus was so devastated, he tore his clothes, refused to cut his hair for months and would repeatedly bang his head against the wall, screaming, Quinctilius Verus, give me back my legions. The loss was so traumatic that the legion numbers 17, 18, and 19 were retired forever. They were considered Kurt's permanent scar on the Roman military psyche. No Roman legion would ever carry those numbers again. But what happened to the few who survived? The aftermath was just as brutal as the battle. Many were taken captive. Some were sacrificed to the Germanic gods in sacred groves. Their bodies hung from trees. Others were sold into slavery, scattered across the tribal lands. Legends and rumors persisted for years about small groups of Roman survivors living far beyond the frontier, their fate a haunting mystery. The story of the lost legions became a cautionary tale whispered in barracks across the empire. The political fallout was immense. The dream of conquering Germania was shattered. Augustus abandoned the expansionist policy, pulling the Roman border back to the Rhine River. This decision had profound consequences, creating a cultural and political dividing line between the Romanized world and the Germanic tribes that would shape the map of Europe for the next 1,000 years. The Rhine became a heavily fortified frontier, the permanent northern limit of the empire. Rome, however, would not let such an insult go unanswered. Years later, a brilliant young general named Germanicus, the nephew of the new emperor Tiberius, launched a series of punitive campaigns into Germania. His goal wasn't to conquer, but to avenge. He led his armies deep into the heart of tribal territory, inflicting heavy defeats on Arminius and his allies. During one campaign, his soldiers stumbled upon the site of the Verus disaster. The Roman historian Tacitus gives us a chilling account of what they found: fields littered with whitening bones, shattered weapons, and the skulls of men nailed to trees. The Romans buried the remains of their fallen comrades in a great mound, a final, somber tribute to the lost legions. Germanicus even managed to recover 2 of the 3 lost legionary eagles, restoring a measure of Roman honor. But despite his victories, holding Germania was deemed impossible. Rome retreated behind the Rhine for good. For nearly 2,000 years, the exact location of the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest remained one of history's greatest mysteries. Scholars debated its location, with dozens of theories proposed. Then, in the late 1980s, an amateur archaeologist armed with a metal detector made a stunning discovery near Kalkries Hill in Germany. He found Roman coins from the time of Verus and, more importantly, lead slingshot projectiles used by Roman auxiliary troops. This sparked a massive archaeological investigation that unearthed a battlefield stretching for miles. Archaeologists found thousands of Roman military items, pieces of armor, sword hilts, nails from sandals, and even the silver-plated facial mask from a Roman cavalry officer's helmet. Crucially, they also found a defensive earthen wall built by the Germanic warriors before the ambush. The evidence was overwhelming. The long-lost battlefield had finally been found. The legacy of the lost legions endures to this day. It stands as a powerful reminder that no empire is invincible. It shows how terrain, strategy, and a determined enemy can overcome even the most powerful military machine in the world. The story of Verus, Arminius, and the 3 legions swallowed by the forest is more than just a historical event. It's a legend of betrayal, revenge, and the indomitable spirit of those who refuse to be conquered. It's a story of how a single battle in a dark German forest forever changed the destiny of an empire and the future of a continent. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into Rome's past. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries. Let me know in the comments what historical event you'd like to see covered next. See you in the next video.